I am a physician and health coach. I'm
Mhm.
also a mom and daughter and wife and all those things. But I think that the main thing is that I was born and raised in Canada, and I went to medical school in Ireland, and then I met my husband there, and then I moved to the States. So a lot of things that happened in the middle of all of that were not in my plans, but I was pretty young. And when my parents moved to Texas, I did not want to go. And so I created a new path that was very unknown. At 17, 19 years old, it was not quite a scary feeling as I think it should have been now that I'm looking back. But I think that it also kind of set me up for the ability to push through on things that were unknown. I know at 17, 18, 19 years old, I think that fear doesn't stop us like it does when you're my age in your 40s. And so it's sometimes good to also look back and remember that I did those things, because I don't think that a lot of us do that.
Yes, I think the more you know, the more you hear stories about things, so you get maybe more reserved, and you don't push through things. But so you have been in Canada, you have been in Ireland, and in States. So you have been in 3 different also health environment, I'm assuming.
Yes,
right?
Yes, that's true. And honestly, I'm a primary care physician. So, I've been practicing for more than a decade. So like about 15 years, actually. And during the pandemic, like most people, I never thought I was going to have all these stories from the pandemic, but I'm realizing that I do. And I think it just gave me some downtime to start thinking a little bit more about things outside of my day-to-day, probably like most people. I didn't have to get up and rush around and get my kids to school and me to work and them to activities, etc. So it gives you a bit of thinking time, which is interesting when you have young kids. And I decided to get my health coach certification. I really didn't know what that meant. I just thought, well, as a primary care doctor, I feel like I am a health coach. I just don't really know what the tools are that I might need more of to do a better job and to improve my patients' outcomes and to, help them with their changes to get the results they want. And so in the last couple of years, that's been an incredible learning experience, incredible journey. And my patients have benefited probably the most, and myself. So for sure. And it's been really enjoyable. And I've learned a lot about what I could do and more about like opportunities and things I never thought about before, or it's been a long time anyway.
Well, can you tell us, like, what do we need a health coach? Like, if we have a primary physician, like as a put your primary physician hat on now. So before taking that training and certification, would you recommend your patient to go to a health coach?
Oh, I didn't know what a health coach was. But I think that as a physician, I wanted to be a health coach. In medical school, we learn to counsel our patients. But that's it. Well, I mean, not learn to, we learn that we should counsel our patients, and that's part of the treatment plan. But we don't really learn, or we didn't learn how to do that. Now they're definitely teaching more of that. I was just at the medical school last week, and they were teaching motivational interviewing. So definitely we're heading in that direction, but it takes time.
Yes.
And so definitely in our healthcare space, as far as medicine goes, it's just not feasible for physicians to do both coaching and medicine, especially if they're working full time. Like, there's just no way. You can't finish all the things every day and be sane. So that's the big problem, probably time. As a primary care doctor, I refer patients to nutritionists. I refer patients to psychologists. I refer patients to physical therapy. I refer patients to online programs. I don't know, all these things. But of course, if I had all the tools, I would do it all myself. I wasn't the expert, and I tried because of lots of reasons, cost and time and patient compliance, etc. But I think now I can be a little bit more efficient And so I can start the ball rolling, and I do kind of a combination of coaching and medicine. And I've seen some amazing changes and progress. But I think that everyone can use a coach.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like if you ask a therapist, I think all therapists will say everybody can use a therapist. Same thing.
Yeah.
It only improves your outcome. Like, it doesn't mean you can't get from A to B. You definitely can, and probably will. But the coach kind of helps you do it a little faster, probably, and maybe with a little bit more permission to be afraid, and a little bit of permission to have self-compassion, and maybe with a little bit of help about catching you in the thought errors that we may have just because we're human.
Yes, and I think it gives you more like maybe a personal touch on your journey to change or adapt, and also like more accountability, you know, like if you have somebody who you will talk maybe every week, you know, like you will be more on track. I don't know, but you have you have the both aspect. You have the medical aspect and the health coaching aspect. So I'm sure your patients are very lucky, you know. Like, what kind of services do you do? So do you provide health coaching services to your medical clients, or do you have a separate health coaching?
I have a separate health coaching business and life coaching business, but I can't help myself but sure. Coach my patients. So I don't like advertise coaching when I have patients, you know. They come willingly for medical care, so that's what I'm there for. But it's very difficult to provide just I don't think it's possible, in fact, for me to provide just medical care, but I don't obviously charge for coaching at the same time. It's all in one, so they're they get extra benefit. But I feel like I can help them get the results that we both want. You know, if you come into my office because you have diabetes and we got to get it under control, but you know, you have a stressful job and you're not sleeping and you're not eating right because, you know, we're human, then why wouldn't I intervene or discuss or bring up? It's kind of like if I didn't bring up the fact that you're a smoker. I mean, that would be crazy, right? But you know, just saying, oh, you should quit smoking isn't really helping my patient. Now they can decide whether they want to start that process, and then hopefully together we can create, you know, a system. Really, I want to create a system of support and, like you said, accountability.
Yes, I think that's what the health coaching part is mostly, right? So do you have a specific patient or client type for your health coaching services?
Not yet. I think that it's hard for me to be exclusive. I know, you know, all the entrepreneur blogs and podcasts I read and articles are all about, you know, finding your exact niche. I think that your niche is really amazing. I've thought about this a lot, just inspiring the next generation in general. Definitely for me, inspiring the next generation of doctors to be more healthy themselves.
I think that's very important. Yeah.
Because it's easy for us to preach, but at some point you're going to stop and be like, what am I doing? I'm not sleeping well. I'm not eating well. Yes, I'm taking care of my patients. I'm sacrificing all these things, but is it really like, if you wake up at 55 and you're like, what have I done with myself for 30 years? What's the point then? You know, sure, you've helped a lot of people. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about this. What would you recommend for, let's say, first for healthcare professional in their 30s to use this, you know, age wisely, both like professionally, but also for their health and well-being in for their future?
I think 30s, especially for women, is tricky. If I had advice for myself in my 30s, I mean, I know this is going to sound kind of vague, but really, I think my advice to myself 10 years ago was, you're on the right track. Even though it feels like weird and unknown and sometimes a bit like crazy or like, what am I doing? I was actually doing exactly what I think I was supposed to be doing. I just didn't know. It felt odd. And that was the scary part. Maybe I wish I had a coach 10 years ago. I wish I'd been introduced to coaching so that maybe somebody was there to tell me, like, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be running around like a headless chicken with your little kids, right? But also you don't need to feel guilty about taking care of yourself.
Yes.
Like, well, I've heard this term, put your own oxygen mask on first for a long time. In fact,
Yeah.
like soon after my daughter was born, I heard this, but I didn't really understand. And definitely I felt guilty about it, right? Like it didn't mean choose myself over my daughter. It meant choose me and my daughter.
Yes.
And this and thing doesn't seem like it should be a coaching concept. It seems like it should be a regular, normal human concept. But it very much is, because we say a lot of like, if I'm choosing me, then I'm not choosing my children. And that feels very odd, right? And in general, like, or I'm choosing me over my parents. That feels very odd also.
Yes.
But I'm not choosing me over my kids or my parents. I'm choosing me and my kids and my parents, which is very different.
Yes. And also, I think when people think about self-care and, investing in themselves, like they sometimes think like spending hours and day to themselves, but it can be even like a 15 minutes a day thing can be very beneficial for your own health. And it will, I think, show immensely in your children, in your family members, to people around you, because you will be doing something for yourself to improve yourself too, your mood, your health, your well-being, whatever you are investing on, right?
Yeah, I mean, we call it like non-negotiables, and that sounds like sometimes a bit negative, but really the point is, like you said, it's about self-care. There's a funny book called Self-Care is Not a Mani-Pedi, because we always think that that's what it is. Like, I'm going to go treat myself to something. First of all, a mani-pedi is required. It's not
not negotiable.
Yeah, like you don't want to see my feet without a pedicure, okay? And nobody does. And so that's necessary. But I think that for me, some of my self-care stuff is actually getting coaching. Taking the time, investing in myself, in getting coaching, finding the right coach, trying new coaches, listening to a podcast. That's, I listen to this podcast every day in the morning about the world and news, but also like, it's kind of a bonus if I get to listen to my podcast about just improving myself or mindfulness. I think, 5 or 10 minutes, 5 minutes even of mindfulness a day and 30 minutes of exercise for me almost every day, or movement. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like, I get to decide what that means. But if I decide, I have to go to the gym for 1 hour every day, otherwise I haven't done anything for myself, well, then of course I'm going to feel bad when I don't go. But I'm not going to set myself up for that. Like, that's silly at this point in life, finally, right? Like, yes. I've done that.
Yeah. But I think we all did. I think at one point in our life, we all had the same hamster life, like struggles, like running around and circling, in that circle. I know that feeling. So what about like parenting in your 30s and with I think with a very demanding job, like doing in the medical business, like you are, what would you recommend to people in their 30s to do? I know there is a lot of like guilty feeling involved.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Hashtag mom guilt, right?
Yeah.
That's what people say.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe Dr. Mom guilt is a
that's like next level. Next level. I'm taking care of everyone except for my kids, right? Yes, like this. Yes. Sometimes we feel like that too. But I think that it really just depends on what you've decided and about what you're being intentional about. I think that's the bottom line. I may not have changed anything that I did. So my kids, went to daycare. We had a nanny. I worked a lot. I worked some days longer. I worked some days shorter. My husband went to work at like 6 a.m. There were so many things, but I didn't, and maybe all those things still would be exactly the way that they happened, but I didn't really think about it. And I didn't give myself permission to do those things. I felt in my head and I was thinking in my head, I have to do these things. I have no choice. And when I tell myself something like that or think something like that, I just create a feeling of guilt. And it's not motivating. It's not self-compassion. It's not a feeling of love. And then it creates a bunch of actions, a cascade of actions towards myself and my children and my house and my family and my husband that just kind of perpetuates resentment almost. And so I think that if we could all just be a little bit more like, I wish I could have been a little more intentional with my decision making. You know, yes, I decided to put my kids in daycare here or daycare there or school here or whatever, right? Like I decided I was going to go to work these hours, but I didn't go into it thinking I am consciously deciding this and I am choosing to do this. I went into it like I have to do it because I have to do this. And sometimes it was,
please go on. Sorry. Yeah.
Sometimes it was even like, I mean, gosh, I hate this thought. I guess I probably had a thought along the lines of, I am choosing to work. And so I have to put my kids in daycare. And that feels horrible. Like, it really feels like I shouldn't be working and that my kids shouldn't go to daycare, at least for me. Versus I am choosing to work and I'm choosing to send them to a Spanish speaking daycare that they're getting lots of love at.
Like socialization, right? Yeah, like, you know, they have to be social too, you know.
Sure. Like I didn't have to justify, but rather I'm choosing to do this because I want to versus I have to. And just the simplest change in thought. Really, this is what coaching has really changed. Just catching myself when I say those I have to's and I shoulds, because when I say that I have to's and I shoulds, the feelings are never, they always feel yucky. But I choose to, it doesn't always have to be like, oh, I want to, I can't wait to do this. Like, I can't wait to wake up at 6 a.m. and drop off my kids and make lunches and go to work. Like, I mean, okay, come on. But I am choosing to do those things as a very neutral thought. And I can live with that. I can live with that. I'm choosing to do it.
And I think also, you know, like in our 30s, we talk to ourselves very sometimes harshly, you know, like if I'm sure if a friend of yours came to you and said, you know, I have to go to work and I have to drop the kids to the daycare, you will say, no, it's not like that. No, you have to be more nice to yourself. You are doing a great job. You are a great mom, and you will tell everything to that friend. But when you are when we are talking to ourselves, we are like, you know, you are a very bad mom. Like, you didn't spend that, you know, 15 minutes with your kids and you listen that podcast, or you woke up at 6 a.m. and woke the kids up at 6 a.m. Like, you know, like all these things. So I think we need to be a little bit nicer to ourselves. Sometimes we can be our own bully, you know, and I think we have to stop that. And I think in our 40s and some beyond, we start to learn that. But if we have done this in our 30s, I think it will be an easier process for us. And for
it's just a few more years of that you don't have to unlearn those thoughts. It's like a habit.
That little by little, you know, being nicer every day, a little more.
And I'll tell you though, like, so for me also, some of the thoughts I had to realize I was thinking were that it wasn't good enough. But I also finally understood that when I told myself that when I was like 15 or 16 years old, let's say, like this is like way back, right? Or 8 or 9 years old or 20 even. When I said to myself, your 85% is not good enough, or your 95% is not good enough, or this score on this grade is not good enough, your GPA is not good enough. At that time in my life, many times, it was actually motivating. Like, it didn't make me feel bad. When I was 15, I was like, I just got to do better next time because I need to do better and I want to go to college, so I need to do better, right? And same thing in college, like I need to do better so that I can get into medical school. That was motivating and it propelled me to do better. But those thoughts continued on. And at some point in my 30s, late 30s for me, I realized that like nothing was still good enough. I kept having these thoughts in my head and they were getting worse almost. Like, but it wasn't true. And it was no longer propelling me, more importantly. It was no longer motivating. It was rather causing a feeling of inadequacy.
I see.
And so at some point you're like, I have to reevaluate the thoughts that are in my head.
Yeah. I think, you know, that's very right. And I think also sometimes those thoughts like push us to think that 30s are too late to change things in our lives. You know, for example, changing career or adding something to your career, like you did, like, adding the health coaching to your medical degree. So I think, we have to pass this thought, and we have to understand that 30s are like just the beginning, because like you are starting to understand life. You are, forming your own family or your own life. So you can change things. You can still learn things. You can add things. You can remove things in your career life. So, and if you are unhappy about it, you have the power of changing it, right? In your 30s, like in every year of your life, of course, but 30s is never late to change things.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I got lucky. There's two things about this. So one is I got super lucky because I have patients of all ages, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have patients from like age 16, 17, 18 years old to like 100, and my 70 to 100-year-old patients are the ones that give the best advice and are willing to give advice and are wanting to give advice. And they are the ones that have really helped me along my path. They, are like, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing in your 30s. This is how you are. And honestly, you don't even have to be unhappy to change something. I was not unhappy.
Sure.
Yeah. Thankfully, I don't know. I guess sometimes I was, but it was more like I have everything and I'm still missing something.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to up level to something more. I mean, many people will say, look at me and be like, what more do you want in your life? You're so whatever. Like I looked at myself and was like, you're being super ungrateful with everything that you have in your whole life. You have everything on earth that anyone could want. Like, what more do you want? But I didn't even know what it was, but I had to kind of get a coach to help me uncover some fears. Like I broke down probably my second coaching session ever when I was like, I just want to do more community service. And she's like, I don't know why you're crying. And she's like, I don't understand. You're gonna have to tell me why you're crying. And at the time it was because I had this longing to give back to my community in another capacity. I didn't know what that meant yet. And I was afraid that adding something to my plate was going to take away from my kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's not possible. It's not possible for me to add any more to my plate and not take away from my kids. Something has to give. And she's like, okay, but you do know that if you add something and it doesn't work, you can take it away or you could change something.
Yeah.
And at that time, I heard someone say, I heard Brooke Castillo, Life Coach School. I don't work for them, but I just have to credit her where credit is due.
Of course.
I watched her little video and she said something like, your life will be unrecognizable. And I thought, well, I don't want my life to be unrecognizable. I do like my life, but I didn't know what she meant from like how I could be fine to good to actually like great. And it's not because anything necessarily has officially changed, like tangibly changed, but rather just my thought process has changed about the things that are around me. And I sound like this like rose-colored glasses optimist, and anyone that knows me knows that I am not, or I wasn't. But the things that I can choose to think that can create like, I don't know, thoughts that actually do serve me, or even positive thoughts, I guess I will. I can't change the way that the world exists. Gosh, I really, really wish I could and did. And there's a lot of things that I dislike and that make me very angry and frustrated and sad. And that's all part of life too. I say that hesitantly because I believe it, but I hate believing it. But if I can choose my thoughts, then I guess I'm going to work on that first.
Yeah, I think, and this is the one that you can change easily, like the other things around you, you cannot change them completely, but your thoughts, your whatever, like investing yourself can be the easiest thing to do.
Yeah. I think investing in yourself, whether it be getting a gym membership or getting a yoga mat, like a fancy yoga mat. That's what I asked for from my brother. I've never had a fancy yoga mat. I don't know why you need one, but I just decided I wanted one this time.
Okay. Hopefully this new year you will get a Christmas.
Yeah, like I don't do yoga much, but I will occasionally like watch a YouTube exercise video at home, and if my yoga mat makes me want to do it more often, then so be it.
Yeah.
I love fresh flowers in my house. I just decided I was going to commit to buying myself flowers every so often.
Yeah.
I don't know, just little things like, and really being honest with myself. I used to tell myself, well, that's a waste of money. That's a waste of time. That's why I don't have a fancy yoga mat yet. I still have the $5 one from Five Below. It's okay. I love it. I love that one too. But I don't have to justify it to myself anymore. Like, if I want it, I want it. It's not unreasonable. It's not going to make me overdraft my account, and I choose to make it make me happy. Yeah. That's okay with me.
I think, in their 30s, women usually they are running around like headless chickens, so they don't have time to just stop and think, why are they thinking like that? Like to question their own thought process. So I think even like slowing down, I don't say stop, like
no, there's no such thing as stop. That's impossible.
Down,
that's not even worth
slow down, and while you are slowing down, just question your thoughts, question the way you talk to yourself, and maybe you will find something that is not working, or that you can make it better, and this will change things, and it will have a butterfly effect, so it will change things accordingly. So
you made me realize that one of the ways to slow down, because if you told me 10 years ago to slow down, I would have been like, I don't even know what that means. When, how, who's going to do all the things?
Exactly. What time should I slow down, and for how long?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me figure out when and if and how long I can do that for, right? Well, there was two things that I started doing that I'm I'm reminding myself. So one is I actually set an alarm for the moment that I left my work. So I would leave my work to pick up my kids from school or daycare. And I used to joke, but it's true, when I left my medical practice, that my real work was starting, because at least at my medical practice, there was like instructions on how to be a doctor. There's no instructions on how to be all the other things. And so I'm like, now I have to make it all up myself. And so I would get in my car and I would literally do 5 minutes of mindful meditation, because there's nothing else to do in my car. As I'm parked and there's no one around me. And I just that was my 5 minutes of quiet time. And actually, even before that, we used to take our kids to the gym. We would put them in kids care, and then me and my husband would work out. But I would actually go, after I dropped them in kids care, back to my car and do 10 minutes of mindful meditation, and then go work out. And there's actually research that, I didn't know this, but there is actually research that improves mood and serotonin and endorphins, mindfulness plus exercise. And so I guess I was onto something. I haven't done it regularly recently, so thank you for the reminder. And also journaling, 2 minutes, guys, 2 minutes. If you can journal, then you can actually get the thoughts out of your racing head onto paper. You don't have to do anything with that journal, just write it for yourself. But at some point, if you have 5 minutes, you could do journaling for 2 minutes and then stare at it for a couple minutes. And then that's a good way of sort of becoming aware of your thoughts. It's a harder way because we're not very good critics of ourselves, or we are over critics of ourselves. That's
harsh,
really harsh critics. So I think a compassionate friend or a coach, or a friend that's a coach, it would be ideal, because she can he can kind of stop you and be like, whoa. I just heard, should, have to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you don't even hear it because we say it so often. Can't catch ourselves.
Yes. Well, those are extremely helpful tips. And I think you gave people in their 30s a to-do list to do now.
Oh no.
No, it's not a to-do list, but it's you could do these things, you can try those things, because in our 30s, everything was minute to minute, a to-do list. This is not a to-do list. This is not to put extra pressure on you. This is just some been there, done that kind of advices, right?
Oh, when I first started, so first of all, when somebody told me about meditation a long time ago, I'm Indian, I was born a Hindu, so meditation has been something I've heard of my whole life. At 16, 17 years old, I remember being like, this is impossible. How can anybody empty their brain, right? And eventually came back to it sometime in my 30s, I guess. And I used to beat myself up about that too. Like, oh, you can't even do this right. You can't even,
me too.
like,
Same thing, you know.
So guided meditation, I think that's a good place to start. Like literally you can YouTube 5-minute guided meditation. And there's a few different ones. You can try all the different, there's like 10,000 probably. Try a few different ones that you feel like, resonate with you. And when it's guided, I feel like you have something to concentrate on, like somebody else's voice, somebody else helping you through it. And please don't do what I did. It's okay. And you know why it's called practicing? Because we're not supposed to ever like actually get it. I know there's people in the Himalayas that can actually do it.
Because I remember, I was also stressing myself when they were saying, go to your happy place. I'm like, which one is my happy place? Like, where is my happy place?
Exactly.
Am I at the right happy place, or do I have another happy place in my mind? So I'm like,
I agree. It takes practice. It takes a lot of practice.
Yes, I think it takes a lot of practice, patience, and like to be kind to yourself, like kindness. And
that's the hard part, I think. For me, that's still one of the hardest parts. But I have to catch myself. I can't change it. I can't be kind to myself if I don't first notice what I'm saying to myself. So I think that's really the first step.
Yeah, listening, and then catching up, and then correcting it.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, toward the end of our conversation, I have 3 questions for you. The first one is, what were the breaking points in your 30s, if there were any, that made you change something in your life? Like it can be your career, your personal life, like what?
Sure.
Do you have anything like that?
I think sort of what I was saying earlier, that I kept on thinking about how something was missing. I had this recurring thought that something was missing. At the time, it was not, I can do more. It kind of started turning into that. I want more impact. I want to be able to inspire. But at the time, this recurring thought of something is missing, or I should be happier, or I have arrived. Like there's a whole thing called arrival fallacy, right? Like I was a doctor. My husband was a surgeon. I had 2 children. We own a house. We actually owned 2 cars. Like we didn't even have car payments at the time. And something, it wasn't that I was unhappy. I just was like, is this it? Like, I just didn't quite, I was like, what is missing? And then I was, of course, beating myself up about not being grateful. But I think that recurring thought was what led up to like a sort of a aha moment. I was like, I don't know what it is, but I got to start looking for. And instead of turning away from the thought something is missing, I let myself turn towards it and start exploring.
Investigate.
Yes, exactly. Even though it felt bad. It felt uncomfortable and scary. Yes. But I just kind of was like, I'm just going to do it anyway and see what happens. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I think, being uncomfortable and going through sometimes that rough phase can be a little bit scary for people, but I think you have to push through that phase and learn something new about yourself, or what you really want to add to your life, right? So the second question is, one thing that you swore by in your 30s that you don't believe in anymore.
I think I was just talking about this the other day. So I swore that there was right and wrong. That's it. That's probably the premise of my whole life. And of course, as a scientist, as a physician, like there is some right and wrong. Okay, right, fine. But it doesn't really apply to everything. In fact, sometimes when I said that to my patients, they would just, especially the older ones, they would just look at me like with this kind of smirk. And I'm like, are you telling me that there is not really much black and white? You know, like there isn't really right and wrong. And they'll kind of look at me again and I'm like, oh God, is there no black and white? And, you know, and they're like, mm-hmm. And the gray is what makes the world colorful and beautiful.
Yes, yes.
And the human experience is what is, it's super scary. It is unknown. It is uncomfortable, but we have to learn that, God, apparently there's no black and white.
Yes.
There is no official right and wrong, but it's okay. And it's okay.
And it's okay.
And it's okay. And I'm not going to die because I'm uncomfortable.
Yes. Oh
usually.
My God. Yeah. Yeah. And our third question is, if the 30-year-old self would be sitting right across you right now, what would you tell her?
Yeah, kind of what I said earlier, which is like,
yes. Actually, we started with that. Let's finish.
I forgot. I forgot this was one of the questions. I think again, it's worth reiterating, because telling my 30-year-old self that you are on the right track, and probably 30, for me, 30 was still like, I just had my second kid and I was just starting my practice. Well, I had started my practice and my husband was still in fellowship. So I hadn't quite like arrived yet. I was still sort of in like survival mode and going through all the motions and I have to's. And I just was like, oh, I'm just going to do all the things that are on my, checklist. Be a mom, be a doctor, etc. Right. So I was still in the checklist mode, but maybe like 32, 34, I guess maybe coming up to my 35th birthday, I can remember a little bit about that, where I was like, I was kind of shaky about all the things I was doing. I was now a doctor for more than 5 or 6 years. And I was like, am I doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing? Or am I just going through the motions? Which, yes, I was. But I wish I could tell her, you're on the right track, actually. Like, all these feelings you're feeling, they're all part of it.
Yeah.
And they're actually valid. All those feelings are fine. They're scary. They're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't want to feel them. But if you are willing to feel those feelings, something great is on the other side. Sure.
Yes. I think we need that tap on the shoulder. And I think we can give it to ourselves the best, right? At that moment, we are not realizing that, but looking back at that time, we are saying, oh my God, I did a very good job, handling all those things in my life. So I was a successful person,
Well, sometimes you have to remind yourself. One of my first coaches made me actually make a binder. It's super uncomfortable. Make a binder of all of my accomplishments.
Oh my God.
Like, first I was supposed to probably write down like a whole page of stuff, but I am better visually. So I made picture collages sort of. And at first I was like, like second grade speech contest and fifth grade something.
Wow, you went all through
That's what she told me to do. I mean, it took me, I couldn't even find anything. She was like, find a picture of you winning this like French speech contest. And I'm like, what? Okay, I don't think I have one, but I can think of something that might represent it. And I guess the point of it really was to remind myself that I can do hard things.
Yes.
That's it. You can do hard things. We can do hard things.
Yes.
And we have done hard things. So why can't we do them now? Just because I don't go on the roller coaster now? Because I'm calculating, I also won't stop my kids from doing it, because I think that that's important to know. I was scared and I did it anyway. And I didn't die.
Yeah. Thank God.
Hopefully, so even though I'm scared. So sometimes, like, looking back, actually, there's a great book called The Gap and the Gain. And it really helped me start understanding that, especially in America, we are always looking for, it's in our everything we do, the pursuit of happiness. But the pursuit of happiness, like it says in this book, kind of sets us up for not being happy today. And to be happy today, you kind of have to look backwards and not forwards. Look back at what you have accomplished. Stop and smell the roses. I think that's where that came from.
Yes.
And even if you didn't, there's plenty more roses to come.
Yes. And enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah, enjoy
While
the
you
ride,
are
even the
talking
roads.
about the roller coasters, enjoy the ride while you are in it.
Yep. Scary and thrilling all at the same time.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, so I would like to finish with having your like health coaching information. So if people want to reach out to you and get
Sure.
your services, how can they find you?
Sure. Just dramitakumar.com. So it's just dramitakumar.com. And I guess you can put it in the show notes or something.
Yes,
So
I will also put it in the show
Perfect.
notes.
That's fine. All my info's there, phone number, email, some of my favorite books and podcasts and YouTube videos.
Nice.
I don't know, some of my favorite things, just, because I don't know, why not?
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring.
Well, thank you so much. I think it was a great talk. And if I was in my 30s, I think I would start questioning myself about like many things in my life after listening this podcast episode. So, and that's what we want, right? We want people to question the way they handle things, to like the way they talk to themselves, so that they can improve little things in their life, and it will create a butterfly effect, and it will keep going.
Totally.
Well,
totally.
Thank you so much. I hope to have you again, because I think it's a pleasure to have you. I like talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was so fun.
Yes, it was fun. Thank you so much.